Here's something you probably haven't thought about, because why would you? It's a given. When you travel on a train, whether it is on the national network or a heritage line, you expect to travel in a coach, a passenger carrying vehicle, a vehicle designed to carry passengers. I mean, why would you expect anything else? Now, don't get me wrong, I do love a cheeky brake van ride every now and then, and frankly, having a ride in a cattle wagon does actually sound quite fun, but if you did it day in, day out, probably would get a little bit mundane, if not uncomfortable, for I am not a cow. Anyway, where was I going with this? We've talked a lot about coaches, both the building and what you expect to find in them with the guys in the carriage shop. So it's about time that we talked about wagons, because when the first railways were invented, they weren't invented for passenger carrying, they were invented for freight. And at the Hants here, we are very fortunate to have a fantastic set of freight wagons that we use for demonstration purposes. So in today's episode, we're going to look at the wagons of the Watercress line and how do you deliver the goods. Here we are at our Moving the Goods exhibit here at Medstead Four Marks. With me is Richard. You've been around here for about 10 years now, isn't it?
Yes, it's just about 10 years.
Yeah, so you can normally find Richard here at Medstead as one of the porters, but occasionally also on shed tours as well. So, the exhibit, what's the story? What was this before we turned it into a museum?
The shed itself originally started life as a goods shed, where goods would have been received by a goods clerk, processed and then put onto a next appropriate train for the destination of those goods, or in reverse, received from the train, brought through the shed and ready for collection.
So like when you get a train as a passenger, I'm guessing depending on where you send your goods, obviously the price is going to be different. So how do you work out how much, let's say, sending your Watercress to London to Covent Garden is actually going to cost?
Yes, that basically is done by the goods clerk. When the goods arrive at the indoor, the goods clerk's responsibility would have included calculating how much it was for those goods to be sent. To do that, he would have referred to a manual which is got all the distances for all the stations all around the country. Looked across, it would indicate the distance in miles and chains. He then referred to a separate list which was a tariff list for the particular type of goods, and then a combination of the distance and the tariff would have determined what the charge was for that.
Oh, fair enough. So in general, what was kind of an expensive product to take by railway?
One of the more expensive ones was anything that was perishable.
So Watercress would probably fall into that category?
Watercress would definitely fall into that category, because it had to be with at Covent Garden Market within X number of hours to prevent degradation and make sure that when it got to the restaurants or whoever was receiving it at the far end, it was still in excellent condition for consuming.
So the museum itself, what is there for people to see when they come down to the Watercress line?
Well, what we've tried to do, we've tried to give people an idea of what it was like and what kind of things could be transported on the railway. To assist us with that, we've got a couple of screens here, one of which is indicating or is showing predominantly some slideshows which are showing some of the historical types of wagons, types of vehicles, if you like, that have been in use on the railway. And the other one is a set of short videos on various aspects, from moving the goods to the wagons to even we've even got a long video on there of the history of the line called Over the Alps. And around here we've then got posters, one of which here actually shows that we can actually transport elephants as well.
I'm guessing you get quite a lot of elephants at Medstead Four Marks.
Yes. No, it's one of those things that these days we wouldn't get many of those. But you must remember that going back, even if you only go back 50, 60 years, back to the 1960s, elephants and lions and tigers were actually being transported because, of course, they were in circuses.
The carnivals, yes.
Not permitted in circuses now, but they were at that time.
Yes, indeed. Well, hopefully no one was keeping them as pets.
No, and again, despite the size, it was more expensive to transport a lion or a tiger than it was to transport an elephant.
That's interesting. Well, I suppose an elephant won't eat its handler if he's kept waiting too long.
Well, no, yeah, it's just because of the potential danger of a lion or a tiger.
Yes, yes. I'd rather have a cat, but who knows? I can see what you mean, a bit too small from an elephant.
Yes, yes.
So I'm guessing it'll be lorries come in, offload straight through onto a train. That's kind of the ideal scenario.
Yes. It would have either been lorries in the latter days, or in the early days, back in the 1800s, it would have been horse and cart.
Of course, yes, makes sense.
And then it would have been offloaded either from the horse and cart or the lorries onto this platform, through the goods shed here, be checked in by the goods clerk, and out onto the platform, and then either into the goods van or a separate box van that was attached to the back of the train, and away it went.
So as technology moves on, things get bigger, surely there's going to be a point where your goods are just too big to fit through this door. So what do you do?
Yes, there is, and for that reason there was a goods dock constructed a little bit further down the platform, which basically meant we could actually deliver a goods wagon in there to offload onto a goods dock and then get collected by a lorry.
Oh, so essentially kind of the big brother of what we have here.
It is, yes, with a bit of mechanical help to save someone's muscles.
Sounds interesting. Can we go and have a look?
Of course we can.
A little Easter egg for you. In Medstead Four Marks station, on the Medstead side, you'll see some rails that sort of just go into the middle of nowhere, into a random shed. Was that ever anything to do with the railway?
It wasn't to do with the railway. It was a private company who had a shed there into which we could deliver wagons with whatever goods it was that they required, and then they could empty them there for themselves, restock them and send them off.
Wow, so sort of a business is booming for them, isn't it?
Yes.
Railway in your back garden. Right, well, let's carry on to the loading dock.
Okay.
So here we are in the loading dock, with the crane, of course. Was this always here, or was this something we've built?
No, it wasn't always here. There was a similar one here in years gone by, but when British Rail ceased transporting goods on the railway in 1964, the crane would have disappeared shortly after that. This one we've actually managed to recover from a local canal, and this kind of crane was used both on railways and canals, so it is actually genuine for this kind of environment.
Oh wow, so one of the canal ones, and by the look of it, it's hand wound, so 4 tons of pure muscle and Weetabix, I'm guessing.
It is. I mean, obviously the gearing helps a lot, but the crane itself, we can actually adjust the angle of the jib by the lever here. We've got another one round the back for which we can actually rotate the crane. So when a wagon or a lorry arrives at the side of the dock here, we can actually lift any heavy goods out of there, swing them across, place them on the goods dock here. We then bring in a goods wagon from our own railway, and we'll then pick up the load, swing it across and drop it into the goods wagon, and it'll then be put onto the back of an appropriate train to get it to its destination.
Oh, so it's quite handy at the moment. So Medstead, the yard is actually the base of the Wagon Group, Permanent Way, S&T and a Buildings Group, isn't it?
That's right, yes.
Absolutely, lots of people here. So it's quite handy. We do actually have a flat wagon here, but I'm guessing that's not really as heritage as we're going for. So let's have a look at the Wagon Group and what we have in stock here. While Medstead Four Marks is the base of the Wagon Group, where they base all their restoration, not everything is kept there because frankly, there's too much of it and Medstead is not big enough. Which is why I've come down here to Alton to speak to Chris, who's the head of the Wagon Group. Chris, thanks for having me down here. So, how long have you been with the railway?
Well, I first joined the Hants in its early days in 1973, and the first wagon I ever worked on was the South Western Tile Distilleries wagon, which arrived in 1974 down at Alresford. So the first job I was given there was with a hand wire brush to help brush down the tank.
Yes, I saw it up at Medstead. Looks absolutely stunning now. So, how many wagons do you have? I'm guessing they're quite varied compared to coaching stock.
About 60 plus wagons on the railway in totality. About 30 of those we would say were form part of the demonstration freight train, so they're either restored, under restoration, or some sort of long-term restoration jobs. And the balance of the wagons are used for engineering purposes, for carrying ballast, for carrying track panels, or used for carrying boilers and things like that around their works down at Ropley.
So with over 60 wagons, some of them running more than others, granted, but it must be a humongous amount of effort to try and keep it going. How big is the team?
Well, we've got about 50 members in the wagon group in totality. Not all of those physically help out on wagons as such. Some of them involved in the admin side on our sort of sales stand. But we average about 25 man days per week, weather permitting, sort of thing.
Oh well, fair enough. So, I shall admit I have been leaning on it, but this wagon, absolutely stunning. I'm guessing either freshly painted or not far off. What is this?
It's a LMS sliding door van, which was built about 1940. So it's obviously it's now about 80 years old. Like most of our wagons that are stuck outside in the open 365 days a year. It's subject to the sort of the wind, rain, snow, ice. So the wood rots, steel rusts, roofs need replacing. So basically every 4 or 5 years we have to sort of repaint the wagons, the outside of the wagons. Otherwise you don't keep up the maintenance programme. The wood gets more rotten, and then you're into sort of replacing planks, and it all gets very sort of complicated and more expensive sort of thing. So the idea is to try and keep on top of the restoration, but obviously that hasn't been helped this year with COVID, and we started off early in the year with it being very wet, and then we went into COVID and we had some lovely dry weather all throughout the summer months, and so basically we were 5 months we couldn't work here at Alton due to COVID, but we've been back since September, and we've finished this wagon off here sort of thing, and we've got another 2 wagons a bit further down the yard you can have a look at.
Oh, fantastic. I have to admit, sounds a bit nerdy. If there's anything I associate with railway and freight, it's definitely one of these. Not just wagon in general, obviously, this type. But yes, can we go and have a look down and visit?
Sure, yes.
Let's go.
Well, firstly, we've got a unique BR highly ventilated meat van. There's only this is the only example left in the of all the numbers that were ever built. With a ventilated van, you normally have 1 vent at the top. This has got sort of 4 vents at the going along the end, and then it's also got sort of side vents. It was highly ventilated, so it would have probably carried meat from Southampton Docks to Nine Elms for Smithfield Market. Well, this is one of my favourite wagons. This is a BR 16-tonne mineral wagon. Now this would have been used for carrying mainly coal, but you could carry anything you want in there really, fly ash, scrap steel. This was built in the 1950s by BR, and incredibly there are something like 250,000 of these wagons that were built. You could see these wagons in virtually every yard in the country 60 or 70 years ago. I was on holiday with my parents in Devon, must have been the early 1960s, and we were at East Budley Station, and I think we wandered down into the yard there, and there's one of these wagons in the yard there, and you could sort of smell the coal in the wagon that had obviously just recently arrived. So one of the other reasons is that I was also involved in getting it to the Hants from back in the early days of BR privatisation, and it was at Alexandra Palace, and it was a bit in limbo because it was an internal user wagon in the Bounds Green Depot, I think it was, and all the BR freight wagons have been distributed to the 3 new freight companies that have been created, but because this is an internal user wagon, it was sort of left in limbo. It didn't belong to anybody. So I worked for Railtrack at the time, so I decreed that it was on Railtrack land, and that Railtrack could sell it. So we sold it for £460 to the Uri Loco Society on the railway here. Right, these are another couple of van fits we just completed. They're all ready to go out for a fitness to run examination. So basically we need a fitness to run examination before wagons are permitted to run in the freight train. So that involves making sure they've had a pad examination, the axle boxes are oiled, the brakes are working properly, and the door fittings are all secure, so the doors won't sort of fly open or anything like that at all. So this is just a small selection of the wagons we've got. So we've got plenty more wagons that we could show you, but unfortunately we haven't got time today to do that.
And there you are, guys, something a little bit different. We really do have a fantastic set of freight vehicles and quite a variety as well. Now these do come out to play every now and then. If you look on the website at watercressline.co.uk, you'll find details of freight running weekends. Obviously it'll be next year now. And also the chances are they'll come out on the galas as well. And if you're really lucky, occasionally we do brake van rides in the Queen Mary brake van, which I've had a ride in before when we were doing training videos, and it is a beautiful ride, sprung like a coach. Absolutely wonderful stuff. So, thank you so much to Richard for taking us through some of the history at Medstead. Thank you to Chris, who we met at Alton, who runs the Wagon Group. And thanks once again for watching, and I shall see you next time for another episode of Things You Now Know.